Hey there, my friend and friends. I don't know about you, but I absolutely love CSS, and for a while I wanted to compile a list of all of the new changes to CSS that has been coming in recently, and it's been coming in hot because it's never been better to learn CSS. Yes, I know Tailwind exists, you can have your Tailwind, but I absolutely love CSS. And I also want to stress out that you shouldn't be overwhelmed by all of these features. The way I learn about things is I just store them in my brain for later when I need them, right? So then I learn them. So for example, if I wanted to use Subgrid, I don't have to go right now and learn on MDN how Subgrid works. I'm like, okay, if I'm doing CSS grid and I need this specific feature, okay, I can remember that Subgrid solves this problem I have. Then I'm going to learn Subgrid. Otherwise, it would be just overwhelming, right? Since it's not your full-time job learning all of these things at once, right? Alright friends, so with that being said, I'm super excited to get started. Alright friends, so the first section is going to be on the architectural foundations, and this really sounds fancy, but this is just about trigonometric functions, complex and selection, scope, and nesting, which are really awesome and one of the features I'm most excited about. Alright, so let's look at the foundations. So first we have trigonometric functions. So now CSS supports trigonometric functions such as sine, cosine, and etc. So now you can make things like this. This looks really cool in my opinion. It's just using some basic 3D, but how cool is this, friends? Alright, so now we can use trigonometric functions. If we go to CSS, we can see how they use here for the translate to adjust its position based on the angle, which is also a CSS variable, right? So now they're using here cosine and sine, and if you really know great at math like me, don't worry, this is really easy to grok. But yeah, you can check out trigonometric functions now. It's supported in every browser, so you can make radial menus, you can make the web more interesting. Alright, so let's look at another one. So we can look at complex and selection, and this might sound complicated like the title complex and selection, but it's really kind of simple. So here I have this example, and basically the gist of it, let me just summarize it for you. You can basically use these selectors inside of your end child. So let me just really show you in CodePen how it works, so this is all going to be clear. So let's say for example that we have this list and then we want to select every odd item. Okay, so first we can say 2n, so this is going to select every other item, right? So you're going to see 1, 2, 1, 2, and etc. But we can offset it, so we can say +1, so this is going to start with the first one, 1, 2, 1, 2, and etc. And this is literally the same as odd. Alright, so now that's simple. That's how simple that is. That's even simpler than what they talk about in the post. That's really all you need to know. This is why I love CSS, this absolutely raw power and flexibility that it gives you, right? So how beautiful is this, friends? And that's all you have to know. You don't have to read all this micro syntax and etc. But yeah, we can actually go to the next example, which is really cool. So now CSS supports scope. Well, it would be if there was great browser support, but unfortunately you're going to see a friend in this blog post with Firefox not supporting a lot of these features because Firefox has some problems. Alright, I hope they make it out because it's really a lovely browser, but we can only hope, right? But anyhow, you can use this add scope feature to scope specific styles to an element. So we can go here and we can actually look at the scope live demo. So you can see here, add scope, we can scope the card to this style, so only match elements in the card component but don't target those in the nested components. So now you get scoping for free. So you get scope styles with CSS out of the box, and this isn't just great for you but for other frameworks, for example like Svelte Vue, which have these single file components. So basically here I have this paragraph in Svelte, and let me just bump this up so you can see what's going on. This is a paragraph, and now when we assign this color, we really don't have to think about unique class names, because if we look at the CSS output, we can see that Svelte auto generates this name for us. So now Svelte, or the implementation authors of that framework, right, they can now remove all of this logic, and in the future when this is supported in all of the browsers, they can just swap it for support, right? So now all of these frameworks are going to be lighter and work with the browser, right? So that's another beautiful thing about this. Alright, so let's look at nesting. And nesting, oh thank God, finally, nesting is supported in every browser with no compromises. I think it works almost exactly the same as says, because you no longer have to use even that ampersand. So you might be familiar or remember the first implementation where you had to use an ampersand, and in some situations you do. When you learn about nesting, you're going to see why, but now it's looser, which is the other specification that came out. So now you don't have to use the ampersand everywhere, right? So look how beautiful this looks like. It looks almost exactly like SAS. And this was one of the only reasons that I still use SAS, because I really don't use it for anything else, right? And when we go here, we can see here, we can do this and we can nest it. And there are some other things we haven't even talked about, like layers in CSS. What are these, right? It looks crazy, right? But you can see here we have this beautiful nesting. It works as expected, and now your styles are way cleaner. But yeah, that's basically it. And now we can also look at Subgrid. So CSS Subgrid enables you to create more complex grids. Where basically, let me just explain Subgrid easily to you. You define a grid in CSS, right? Boom. And now you can say to the children using Subgrid, hey, you can use the grid lines from the parent. That's it. Boom. Not that hard to grow. They show you this example here, right, where they're using grid. So let me just go to the Subgrid live demo. And we can actually see the CSS. And let's actually open this or open, so just so we can inspect it for a second. So now we can look here. Let's just open the developer tools. It's going to be way easier to understand than anything else. Let's just target this. I'm going to bump the size up. So now let's see. Select. So here it is. Here is the grid. Okay, so this is the parent grid. And now you can see here we have these grid lines and etc. So now we want the children to use them. Boom, now we can go to the article. We can just say, boom, you're going to be subgrid. Now we can use all these grid lines. So now you can see we can beautifully align these nested children, right? So this is what I'm talking about. You don't have to learn all of these intricacies immediately. You're like, okay, subgrid solves that problem. Okay, I'm going to keep that in mind. So when I encounter this problem, I can learn subgrid. That's basically what subgrid is. It's really nothing complicated, right? So you can see here, grid, and then it says for the grid template low subgrid, and boom, simple like that. You can just use it. Alright, so let's go to the next section, which is going to be on typography. Alright, so what's up with typography? Let's look. So web typography saw a few key updates in 2023. So there's some nice progressive enhancement in the texture property. Oh yeah, so there are some cool things. So you have this initial letter thing. This really isn't interesting to me, but maybe you might find this cool. So basically you can use this initial letter property to style the first letter of a paragraph or whatever. This is whatever to me. But this is actually something really cool. Text wrap, balance, and pretty. So let me just open this demo. So you can see. So you can use this property, text balance, and then you can say balance, so you can get harmonious blocks, whatever that means. That probably means some algorithm is going to. So you know how you have those titles, and they can sometimes look weirder. Basically, boom, you can just slap a balance on a title, and you can slap pretty on paragraphs if you don't want to have orphans. And basically orphans are those hanging pieces of text, etc. You know what I mean. I don't even have to explain this to you. But yeah, let's actually look at this example. So this is really cool. So this is without balance. So let's observe first the title, how it looks like. So it looks like this. And then when we go here to the balance, you can see how this algorithm make the title look more appealing, and we can see what the balance does to this paragraph. So it looks way neater, right? So you don't have to do this hand manipulation, etc. So let's look at the pretty property. So this is how the title looks like using pretty. So I would use balance on titles most likely. And you can see how the paragraph barely changes actually when using this, unless I'm wrong. Yeah, it barely changes. But yeah, you can check this out. It really makes things easier, but just be careful to not slap this on everything. And let me see what's the support for this. Do they say it? So they put it for initial letter. It's supported everywhere but in Firefox. RIP. So we can go to text wrap. They don't actually mention if this is supported in every browser. Let's see on MDN. I think, should this link to MDN? Oh, it's not MDN, it's developer Chrome, but we can see it's in every browser, and surprise, it's not in Safari, I think. Okay, cool. Firefox, thank God you win this one. Okay, let's go to the next section, which is going to be on color. And trust me, colors are really wild in CSS now. Alright, so let's talk about color. And oh boy, I know some people are very excited about color in CSS, but man, it's so overwhelming, and I have to be honest, I really don't care about learning about all of these things because it's just insane, but actually it's awesome. So basically, let me just give you the TLDR. Basically, by default right now, when you specify a color in CSS, you have these beautiful fancy screens, right? iPhones with a high resolution, right? But currently you can only use sRGB, right? Which is, I don't know how many colors are there, but basically the CSS spec is like, okay, we should support more of these colors, right? And basically this is the idea behind this color. You have more color spaces to support this because you can't use something like HSL or hex colors to specify these advanced colors. But you can see actually there's really a lot of them, right? And this can be really pretty overwhelming. So you have hex, RGB, which is normal, sRGB, it's really not important, HSL, this is my favorite that I use right now, but you have some new color spaces like LCH, OKLCH. I think OKLCH is going to be what you use instead of HSL by default. This is just what I want to know by someone smart like Adam Argyle. Okay, Adam, tell me which color space should I use by default so I don't have to think about it. Of course, he would say something smarter like, okay, it depends what you're doing, right? But okay, I'm really not interested in all of this color theory and etc. But yeah, this is going to be it. And basically, just what I said, this just means you have to use these new color spaces if you want those vibrant new colors. And I can't even show this to you on YouTube because you wouldn't be able to see the colors over the video, right? But if you have a fancy screen like that supports all of these colors, then you're going to use these new color spaces. And I guess this is going to be more prominent in the future because it's going to be really noticeable if you have these advanced screens. So websites that use these color spaces are going to pop out more than the other color spaces. So they're probably going to look washed out, and over time we're all going to adjust to this and move to this new color space. I think they call it P3, right, or whatever. But actually this is the least interesting part of the color spaces to me. What's more interesting to me is these color mix functions and relative color syntax. Dear Lord, I absolutely love these features. So again, something you don't need CSS for anymore. There's some edge cases and some things that are supported, but for example, let's look at the color mix function. So now you can mix two colors easily. Okay, let's just go to the demo. And now we can see we can use any of these color space. So for example, I can pick HSL or whatever else. So now you can use this color mix syntax in HSL, and now you can mix between these two colors if you need it, so you're making a design system or whatever, right? And you can see, oh, I didn't even play with this longer, etc. It's really important to tell you, there's so much crazy things to this color, and it's just really no point to get overwhelmed by this. But yeah, OK Lab, you can pick OK Lab, and then you can see you can just mix color. That's really great. But what if you want to lighten or darken a color, etc.? So now this is where the relative color syntax comes in. I don't think this has great support yet, or it's missing some features, right? But as we can see, we can mix colors, right? So let me just really show you here, I think, what this really means. So this is a really great example by Adam. So let's say, for example, that you wanted to reduce the opacity of some color right now as it stands. So you would have to specify these variables. You would have to specify hue, saturation, lightness. So now you would have this crap, brand HSL, and now you have this brand color. Okay, and now you can just mix them together here. Oh, you can see how much work is it. This is so annoying, right? So you say brand color version HSL var brand HSL, and then you can reduce the opacity by 50%. Well, no longer that's the case with this, I even forgot the name, relative color syntax, right? So now you can just specify, look how beautiful this is. You can just specify, I need to zoom in to show you how beautiful this is. So now you can just specify the brand color. You don't need to do all of that crap. This is all you need to know about this. Yes, these colors are complicated, but this is all you have to know. So brand color variant, you say HSL, whatever color space you're using, it works. You can say from, boom, slap this color, and now you can specify for the hue, saturation, and lightness that you want to reduce this crap by 50%. Boom, you're done. Have fun, enjoy your life, whatever, right? That's how beautiful that is. That's what I'm really most excited about. And yeah, we can even look at this demo so we can tint these dinosaurs. How wonderful is this, friends? But yeah, that's basically it, what you need to know about this relative color syntax. And I'm actually curious about the support. So let me just look at it, and I'm curious, why did this... Ah, because I zoomed in the other article. Yeah, they're on the same way. Oh man. Okay, so let's just see what this is. Color mix, relative color syntax. This is what we're interested about. So this is the same article, right? Okay, so we can just see it here. What's the support like? Oh, it doesn't say. Let me just see. Well, actually, you can research this yourself. Maybe if I go to the bottom, I'm going to say. Nope, not really. Well, okay, let's not dwell on it, right? But you can check out the support if you want, and it's going to come to the browser eventually, so we can all take advantage of this, right? How beautiful is this, friends? Oh, but one thing that I almost forgot about, you can check out this amazing site by Adam Argyle, HD Gradients, so gradient.style, and you can play around with all of these new fancy gradients. So you can go here linear, you can pick some other color you want, and then you have these color spaces, you can have OK Lab and etc. HSL, so you can go play around. If your screen supports it, you're going to see these new vibrant colors, how they pop out, right? But yeah, basically you can play around with this, so you should check this out. But yeah, let's get back and let's talk about responsive design in CSS. Alright friends, so this section has some absolute bangers. So let's look at responsive design in CSS, and this is absolutely incredible. First, let's look at container queries, which are absolutely insane, and I think it's supported in every browser you can see here. So basically, too long didn't read, instead of querying the viewport using media queries, right, you can actually query the element itself based on its inline size or whatever else. So you can see here, we aren't querying the viewport here, we are actually querying the size of this element. And if we actually go to the demo here, and let's just open it on ColdPen so we get that resizable thingy. And let me just also change the view. So now you can see, first let's look at the style. So here is the HTML. So here we say in the header section container, we say header, inline size, which you're going to look at. And now instead of, you can see there is no media query here. We can just say, hey, container, if the width is higher or equal to 400 pixels, then it's going to change. And that's the true for all of these other things. So let's see how this changes. So you can see how this thing changes based on the inline size, no media queries and etc. So you can plop your card or whatever else you need where you want, and it's going to resize based on that. So you don't have to use a media query. And let me actually show you, this is actually a much better example in my opinion. So here's this post container queries. So this is just a card, this is the same component, right? So using a media query, you would have to query this entire viewport, but this isn't no longer the case. Basically, you just query the element here. And this says with container queries, you can query the styling information of a parent element, such as its inline size. With media queries, you could query the size of the viewport, but container queries enable components that can change based on where they are in the UI. So if you have this card in your hero section, then it's going to match that size. If you put it in the sidebar, it's going to know its width, right? So you can style it based on that instead of using the viewport. That's basically it. Container queries are super simple, but there are some other things that I love about them. I'm not sure if they mention it here. So there are basically these new units in container queries. So now you can actually have fluid, responsive resizing text, right? So you can check that out if you want to dive deeper into container queries. But I'm just going to move along and talk about style container queries. So this, I think, has barely any support. It's not in Firefox or Safari, but basically you can not just query the inline size, you can query the styles of an element. So you can say, okay, do you have this style? Okay, then do this. So it says here with style queries, currently you can query the value of a custom property on a parent element when using container style. For example, query if a custom property value exists or is set to a certain value. So for example, you can check at container style, is this CSS variable range true? And then you can style it based on that. So you can actually check out this demo if you want, but the support isn't that great. But yeah, that's basically it. You can see here some of the cool things. Also, in future versions of the implementation, you'll be able to query ranges of value to determine the style specified. So you can say even style 60 if it's less than this variable weather or less than or equal to 70. So basically, there's going to be a bunch of cool things, but since it's not that really supported, I'm not really excited about this right now. But here is one thing I'm excited about, and that is the has selector. So this is known as a bunch of names. This is known as the parent selector, the family selector. But let me just explain this to you how simple that is, how you should think about the has selector. So let's, for example, go to this demo. Let's find out where they use has. Alright, so you see how they have this dot card has. So the way you read this, you can read has as if. Basically, right now in CSS, you can only target an element going from left to right, right? So for example, you would have dot card media, and then you would only be able to target card media. But what if you want to target the parent element, in this case dot card, based on if it has some element or something else? Well, this is basically what this has selector means. So you read this as this. You can just read this right side. So based on what's on the right side, we're going to target and style the card. That's how simple that is. This is really the simplest way to explain this. So now you can do all sorts of crazy things based on that. And there have some other examples. So it can also accept a relative selector list as its argument. So for example, you can do some crazy things like this. You can say, again, how do we read this? Well, we can say colon has plus li hover. So if the adjacent li element is being hovered, then we're going to target this li. And now you can do some things like this, simpler. So like the doc in your operating system, right? So you can do a bunch of things like this way easier. I absolutely love the has selector. Also think about how much easier it's going to be to theme a component. So for example, you have a data attribute theme light. So now instead of having that globally, you can have all of those styles located in your, in quotes, component, right? So you can actually say has, and then you can use the theme, and then you can style based on that. And that's really awesome. And there's some other things here I don't honestly understand. Update media query. So the update media query gives you a way to adapt UI to the refresh rate of the device. This can be blah, blah, blah. I actually don't care about this. Then there's some scripting media queries. The scripting media query can be used to check whether or not JavaScript is available. Okay, that's cool. Good to know, right? But yeah, that's basically it. Reduce transparency media query. So how we have those other queries prefers reduce motion. Now we have this media query prefers reduce transparency. Alright friends, so there are some amazing things when it comes to interaction coming to CSS. So we're talking about view transitions, we're talking about scroll animations and etc. Finally, the CSS gods took pity on us. They said, oh my god, these people are writing 10,000 lines of JavaScript for simple things. Maybe the browser support this. You think, okay, listen, the platform moves slowly, but it does move, okay? So first let's talk about view transitions. I don't want to bore you with here. I just want to show you immediately the example, what problem this solves. So you understand it and get excited about this, because I am. So first I'm going to skip these view transitions. And basically what are view transitions? So you have a phone, right? You remember that meme? So you know those awesome native transitions on your phone from screen to screen. Well, basically that's the idea. We want to take that and bring it to the web. So we don't write 1,000 lines of JavaScript, right? So for example, without view transitions, you can imagine this demo is maybe some gallery, shuffling a deck of cards, adding things to a to-do list. So if you change it, it's okay, but there's like really no context of what's going on, etc. But what if we enable view transitions? So now when we make a change, it's going to actually animate between these elements just using view transitions. And you can see the code is very simple for this. And people also associate view transitions with page transitions, but this is any transition. This just transitions the DOM element. And let me actually explain this to you quickly how this works. So basically, when you make a view transition, you're telling to the browser, hey, this element is going to animate, it's going to literally take a screenshot of that node, like literally an image, and it's going to crossfade it by default. But you can also use CSS to change those transitions, right? So it's going to actually take two images, before and after, and then it's going to blend between them or whatever else you specify. That's how this works, and it's really kind of a simple concept, but unfortunately it's really not that supported right now. It's in Chrome and Edge because it's Chrome-based Edge, right? It's not in Firefox or Safari, but it's going to be. And we can actually look how simple the code looks like. So in this demo, we have the JavaScript, and it looks intimidating because this is just using raw dogging it with vanilla JavaScript. But the only line that you have to concern yourself about is this document start view transition. So this is really simple to do in a library like Svelte or etc. When you're going to update the DOM, you're just going to call document start view transition, you're going to make the change, and then you're going to do the transition. And it just works like magic, and it's absolutely beautiful. And another benefit of view transitions is that it can make regular multi-page applications. So using something like Astro, right, where you move to another link, it completely refreshes the page. If you add view transitions to those multi-page applications, they're going to feel like a single page application. So that's another beautiful thing about view transitions. There's this another awesome thing, linear easing functions. So easing functions are right now not that great in CSS. They're okay, but they're like lame. But basically using linear, you can create some more interesting effects like bounce or spring effects in CSS. Well, actually emulate them thanks to using this linear function. So here you have this custom easing. To be honest, this example is not that great because you can barely notice the difference, but actually seeing some other linear functions, and it actually makes your animations or what you have come to life. It actually looks so much better than the default easing. But you can see how this custom easing feels more rigid, but this linear easing feels more bouncy or springy, right? So you can look at something like that. Alright, so there's a lot to say about scrolling, but there's a bunch of things coming to CSS that can help you with scrolling, so you don't have to use those libraries. So let me just look at the scroll length so you can know where you're scrolling in the document. But actually, I'm just going to cut to the end because we can talk about this all day. You can check out tutorials or whatever else you want if you're interested in scroll-driven animation. So now basically it's so much easier to do scroll-driven animation. You don't have to use the Observer API or whatever. I'm just blanking on the name right now. You know what I'm talking about, right? So how annoying is that API to use? But basically you can just use CSS right now to use scroll-driven animations. So you can make some beautiful things as they show in this example, right? So you no longer have to use JavaScript for that if you don't want to. And now let me just show you how this culminates. So you can use all of these features. I'm not going to go into detail about this, but now with pure CSS, you can make a carousel without a problem, without those annoying problems, right? And then you have some other things. Wait a minute, let me just hide this. So when you go here, let me just see, can I click on this? Oh, awesome. So now you can also see, and you have some other things for scrolling. You can actually make the elements snap in certain positions, etc. But listen, we can be here talking for hours about scrolling animations, and I apologize if I'm going fast, but the idea of this is just to give you a recap of what's going on. So if you are interested in something like this, then go ahead, dive into it deeper. But yeah, that's basically it. And then you have these discrete property animations. So now you can actually animate things like display none, which you couldn't before. So that's basically the gist of that. And then you have the starting style. So the starting style CSS rule builds on you, blah, blah, blah. So this rule provides a way to give an element a before open style that the browser can look up before the element is open on the page. And this is very useful for entry animations and for animating in elements such as a popover or dialog. So you can also check this out if you want. And then this is really awesome. So now in CSS, you have this awesome, well, in CSS and in HTML, you have some cool elements like the dialog, popover, and etc. It really doesn't have great support in Firefox and Safari, but I can't wait for this to come in the browser. And I also think that you can polyfill these things, but whatever, right? But yeah, basically now this is all made so much easier. So now if we look at this demo, where's Popover, let me just hide this. So now when we press this, boom, we can get this, and there's like barely any JavaScript, right? This is just for toggling some classes. You can see how this CSS looks like. So if you never use the HTML dialog element, it's absolutely beautiful. You get this pseudo class backdrop and etc., which is really easy to style. So you don't have to use a UI library for making a dialog because, oh my god, making a model or whatever is so painful. You're like, okay, let me just style this. Oh, it pops in the middle of the screen, right? It's really simple to style. Okay, but what about the scrolling behavior right now? You have to disable the scrolling. So now you have to somehow apply the class to the body or whatever to disable scrolling. Like, it starts to get really annoying, and now the web platform actually takes care of that for you. But yeah, that's basically it. Alright friends, so I talked about Popover, but in this section CSS doubles down on giving you these sort of primitives for building common UI patterns. So CSS is working on things they mentioned here. They're working on making it easier to style dropdowns, having anchor positioning. So for this you have this Popover API, you can use this. Now you no longer need to use JavaScript for things like this menu. So if we open this example here, let me just open it right here, and we can see this is just CSS. How beautiful is this? As you can see, there is no JavaScript here. Some other things like horizontal rules in select. So this helps you visually break up your content. So you have this select, so you can use horizontal rules here. But basically that's it. So you have user valid and invalid pseudo classes. So this is going to make your form validation and errors easier because you can use these pseudo classes to show the user more feedback, right? Which is always a great thing. And then you have things like exclusive accordion. They say that here a common UI pattern on the web is an accordion component. And then you can combine the details element. So now let's see, now in Chrome 120 support for the name attribute on details element. When this attribute is used, multiple detail elements that have the same name value form a semantic group. Okay, so this is just an exclusive accordion. So if we look at an example here, when we open one accordion, the other one closes, which you would have to use JavaScript in the past. But yeah, I guess this is nice. I'm really not a fan of the exclusive accordion pattern, but I guess if you want to use that, then you can. But basically, that's it, friends. If you want to learn CSS, you don't need any fancy course. You can go here to learn CSS, and you can actually go here. They have these articles. They're not videos, but actually you can just go here and learn the most important things like the box model. And you can also, alongside this, listen to the CSS podcast on all of these topics. And you go through this, you do a couple of exercises, and that's it. Basically, this is really lovely. I'm going to put all of these links in the description. But yeah, that's basically it. If you watch this far, well, I appreciate you. And if you like what you've seen, don't forget to like and subscribe. And you can also support me by becoming a patron. Thank you for watching, and catch you in the next one. Peace.